Namaste. Welcome to our 17th Gita talk. I am switching translations in my commentary. The translation of Swami Prabhuvananda is absolutely marvelous. It is perfect for those who have not read the Gita at all, and for those who have little knowledge of Indian religion and philosophy. And he did a marvelous job in aiming it toward people who didn't have this knowledge. And as a result, he put in kind of chancy equivalents for some terms rather than certain very technical terms. And he left some things out that he felt would take so many footnotes to explain, that he felt it was better to just not have it. But I want to give the full picture, and actually my version pretty well does it. And therefore, again, we will start, because I started the fourth chapter and then didn't have any time to comment. So again, beginning the fourth chapter. Krishna speaks to Arjuna and says, "This eternal yoga I taught to Vivaswat." Eternal yoga. Why is it eternal? First of all, because it is simply the process of enlightenment which is inherent in the universe itself, inherent in the creation itself. That is, the laws which govern life and evolution are embodied in yoga. And yoga, in a sense, we could say, is the revelation of these laws. They're absolutely interdependent, which is why, rational people have a rationale for whatever they do. The rationale of yoga is Sanatana Dharma, the eternal religion, Hinduism. And you cannot separate them. There's no such thing as yoga for non-Hindus. There's no such thing as yoga for people that don't have the picture that Hinduism gives. Otherwise, it's silly. And it makes no sense, because it is something which will transcend our ordinary life and awareness, and therefore is transcendent in its meaning. And if you don't know as much of the transcendent reality as is necessary for understanding, well, then you'll never really know and understand. Therefore, an absolutely detailed and technically correct translation is necessary. So I've come to that. Sorry. I don't mean it as a plug or a commercial for my translation, but that's the reason I'm doing it. All right. So this eternal yoga he taught to Vivaswat. Vivaswat was a very ancient sage, a great sage. Back, truly, we can say, in prehistory. Manu is virtually prehistory. And so he says, this eternal yoga I taught to Vivaswat. Vivaswat taught it to Manu. And Manu taught it to Ikshwaku, another great sage. Thus, handed down in succession, and this is very important. It has to have a history. It means that if we're going to find the philosophy that leads us back to the very beginning, that is, to the absolute, to Brahman itself, and the process that will lead us back to that. I'm not speaking of just discovering history. I mean, back to the very roots of our existence. That's the yoga you have to have. It can't be yoga for modern man. Oh, we all love all kinds of books that say for modern man, for the, now it has to say the 21st century. If it's for that and you're interested in real spiritual life, forget it. Go to the source, go to the well, the infinite well of this wisdom. All right, so thus handed down in succession, the royal sages or seers, rishis, Raja rishis, the word in Sanskrit, knew it. They didn't know it because one day a light went on in their head and they understood it, or some profound intuition told them. No, they, every one of them, were perfected yogis. And when their yoga sadhana was perfected, their consciousness was perfected and made, in a sense, boundless. And therefore, they knew all these things. They knew it by their own knowing, by their own vision, by their own insight and outsight, comprehending the outer part of their existence and the inner part of their existence. This is very important because, see, the yoga was taught to them. The philosophy was not taught to them. The so-called truths were not taught to them. The yoga was taught. And by practicing the yoga, they discovered those truths for themselves. Now we're living in a very confused and shallow time, and also where people live a very short life. There were higher ages where people lived 500 years, 700 years. So they had time in which to study and work it out, but we don't. So we take the foundations then laid for us by the wise, such as Vyasa, who has relayed this Bhagavad Gita to us. After a long lapse of time, this yoga was lost here on earth, naturally, because this is the world of forgetfulness. A person lives in spirit in higher worlds, but when they come down to this world and they are incarnate in a physical body, they forget all about it. Luckily, it is in their higher bodies, the memory, the knowledge, and therefore, if they cultivate higher consciousness, higher intuition, it will come back to them. That's why, as I said in the beginning, that when I read the Bhagavad Gita, there were two things that were amazing to me, but nevertheless, it was my experience. I didn't feel I was reading a book written by somebody else. I felt like my own spirit, my own true self, was talking to me through this book. And that I was not learning anything. I was remembering what I had always known. I just had this intuition. I hadn't read anything in Indian philosophy before this. I didn't have any idea of these concepts. All I knew was fundamentalist Protestantism of the most narrow scope. So it was a great revelation to me and a great relief. So it was lost, as it had been lost to me. But he continues then, Krishna does, this ancient yoga, it's nothing new. Again, it's not for the new age. It's not for the new culture and so on. This transcends all that pettiness. But petty people prefer the pettiness. This ancient yoga is today declared by me to you because you are my devotee and friend. Arjuna both worshipped Krishna. He knew he was God incarnate. And he also loved him because he was his friend. That's the same with us and God. God is the nearest friend we have, the dearest that we have. And at the same time, is infinitely beyond us. He's infinitely above us and yet finitely inside us. There's no need to try to understand it. Just get the experience through yoga sadhana, specifically Soham Yoga Sadhana. All right. So he says, this secret is supreme indeed, both in the sense that it's the highest knowledge and that virtually nobody knows it. So it's the most unknown secret, the most secret as well. So Arjuna naturally asks, your birth was later, and Vivaswat's was earlier, I'll say, ages and ages earlier. How then should I understand that you taught this in the beginning? This is because even if we associate with a transcendently great person, because that's absolutely new to us and is not in our range of experience at all, we keep forgetting it. We tend to keep just staying in the context of our own ordinary experience. And you can forget that they are who they are. Anandamayi Ma was beyond expression. I won't even say she was infinite because that's infinite as opposed to finite. And that's a duality, and she wasn't in it. I have no idea who and what Ma was, and it doesn't matter. I know what it was when I came into her presence. There was an awakening there that did not occur otherwise or outside. And there were many people who traveled with Ma, and they had seen miracles around Ma. They had seen Ma speak tremendous words of wisdom that couldn't be found in any books and so on. But still, they couldn't keep up that high perspective, and things would just kind of become for what them was normal. And people get annoyed with Ma. I knew someone that had traveled with Ma for years who was perhaps among the closest associate with Ma. And one time she got annoyed and she said, not to me, but to a friend of mine, I don't believe a word she says anymore. She always keeps saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that. Then she doesn't do it. They were especially annoyed because you see, 40 people or more travel with Ma. So if Ma was going to go, say, from New Delhi to Kanpur, 40 people were going to go, and they went by train, always. So Swami Paramananda, who was a transcendently great sadhu, would go to the New Delhi train station and he would buy 40 tickets for Kanpur for a certain day at a certain time. And then maybe an hour before they would leave, Ma would say, no, we're not going now. So he had to rush back to the train station, ask to turn in the tickets. And when you do that, they don't give you your full amount of money back. And when you're talking about 40 tickets, that's a lot of money not given back. And this might happen 2 or 3 times. So people got very, very upset with Ma. But they didn't realize that the problem was that they hadn't said to Ma, all right, Ma, when you are ready for us to go, you say it, and then we'll go get the tickets. No, they didn't. So it was really their doing too. But anyway, there were a lot of people who one day they'd realize Ma was God, the next day they'd think that she was this kind of Bengali woman without much practical good sense. This is how it happens. It's not easy to deal with divinity present before you, and it's a little risky because there were people who destroyed their spiritual lives, at least for this incarnation, and I think for many, by turning on Ma and hating Ma and insulting Ma. Because remember, everything you do creates karma. Well, what about when you're relating to an infinite being? Though I said I won't say she was infinite, but she was plenty big, and it was plenty big karma. And a person should be careful how they deal with such a being. And always be grateful, though, that they know such a being. All right, so many of my births have passed away, and also yours. I know them all. You do not know them. Of course, some people do learn about some of their past lives, but if you knew about 300 past lives, well, that's not even the proverbial drop in the bucket. But Krishna, being totally conscious, knew all of his manifestations. If we consider Krishna an avatar in the sense that he's an absolute liberated being who's absolutely retained his perfect and total divinity and has now come back to help us, that he has these many lives. There are also avatars that the infinite just appears in the world. His body isn't even material and lives seemingly as others, and he may just simply go away into the heavens like Jesus, or he may dissolve, or he may appear to die. But all of it all hides the reality of the person that we're talking with. Sorry, I know I'm taking a long time on this, but it's an important principle. A lot of people say, well, I wish I knew Buddha, I wish I knew Krishna, I wish I knew Jesus. It was a bit risky. It was a bit risky. I've seen it. It's very risky. All right. But naturally, Krishna knew all of his manifestations, all of his incarnations. And of course, Arjuna didn't, because, first of all, to just cope with this life, we have to not remember 20,000 years before. How could we hold it in our mind all along? So we forget, and it's right to forget at that moment, and then it's right to remember at a future moment. Although birthless and imperishable, because they're not the same, because the imperishable is never born. But a part of us is imperishable, and we are born, and therefore we are dealing with these things. Although the Lord of all beings, controlling my own prakriti, prakriti means energy, it's primal energy, actually the primal substance of which the whole cosmos is made. I come into manifested being by my own power of Maya. You see, we come into manifested being by the power of our karma, by the power of action. But God comes by his pure will, which is also pure wisdom at the same time, and therefore is perfection. Whenever Dharma decreases and there is the arising of adharma, then do I manifest myself. And I see by looking at the timer that I have right now 6 seconds left. So this will have to be like when I was just a little boy and I went to the movies and we had movie serials. In other words, it would take many, many hours for the story to unfold, but each segment was about 30 to 40 minutes long. And then there'd be some usually catastrophe at the end, and then it would say, what will happen to such and such? See the next installation, trapped in the cave of doom or such, and it went on. So I hope, despite my pedestrian way, that you're interested in what we will talk about in the next talk. So thank you for your attention and your patience.